Hello and welcome to today's coffee shop conversation with friends moment in our worship. I have some friends with me today to have a conversation. Also, my colleagues on the Mission Center leadership team for the Greater Pacific Northwest USA Mission Center. I'm going to invite everybody to introduce themselves here by sharing their name and where they live, what a favorite coffee shop beverage of theirs is, and also because today we are kicking off our Enduring Principle series for our Community Connections worships for the spring and summer. I'm also going to ask them to share what their favorite enduring principle is and why. So with that, let's begin.
Well, okay, I'll jump in. I'm Kim Naton, and I live up in Granite Falls, Washington, which is about a half an hour east of Everett, Washington. Very small little community. And my favorite coffee shop beverage in cold weather is a sugar-free hazelnut almond milk latte, hot. Uh, in cold weather, it's a salted, what's it called? Cold foam,
Oh, cold brew?
cold brew with salted cream. There's
Yeah.
a name for it, and that's my favorite for hot weather.
Sweet cream, I think, or something like that.
Wheat cream. There we go. Anyway, and I would say I gave this some thought about my favorite enduring principle, and I think that I really love grace and generosity because to me, that means a lot of things in terms of how we are treated and what Christ modeled. But it is an active thing that we can do, and we can offer grace and we can offer generosity in so many different ways, generosity of spirit, generosity of time and talent, and certainly, obviously, generosity of resources. But to me, that really is kind of the nugget of what discipleship means for me.
My name is Ashley. I live in Vancouver, Washington. My go-to coffee drink is an iced caramel white chocolate mocha with almond milk. But today I'm drinking hot cocoa from my favorite mug. It says "This girl loves Christmas." It's really hard for me to pick a favorite enduring principle because I love them all so very dearly. But I really think an argument could be made that all of the enduring principles could fit under the umbrella of grace and generosity. So for me, in that way, grace and generosity is elevated above the others.
Thank you.
And my name is Donald Welch. I live in Salem, Oregon, and it seems like we all have very complicated favorite coffee shop orders, which I think is fun. But my favorite is a Starbucks grande mocha with no whipped cream and a solid dusting of cinnamon on top. So bourgeois. My favorite enduring principle, like Ashley, is a little hard for me to pick, but the one that I chose is also the most challenging to me, and it's the blessings of community, which is the idea that the principles of Jesus are best lived out in the midst of a community, and that a covenant to that community both challenges and nurtures disciples. Living a faith together in a community is so great to me exactly because it is so hard, and I feel like if it weren't hard, it wouldn't be great.
And I am Sean Langdon, and I live in Vancouver, Washington. I think it's hilarious that out of all of us, my coffee shop beverage is the easiest, and that is just a caramel latte. I just like anything with caramel in it, but a good old caramel latte. And a favorite enduring principle of mine is continuing revelation. I love the idea that God still speaks to us today, and also I really appreciate and value it because continuing revelation I think is a reason why we've been able to move forward on a lot of social justice issues in the life of the church as well, and so it really speaks to me for that. Well, thank you for introducing yourselves. For this the conversation part of our time together, we're going to be looking at the enduring principle of blessings of community, since that is the focus of our worship today. So I've invited my friends here to share, because there are 7 descriptors that Community of Christ has for this enduring principle. I have invited them to share a descriptor that was means something to them, and then to reflect on that. So, as you're ready, let's go ahead and share in this conversation of reflecting on blessings of community.
I'll go first. The prompt that I chose to respond to today was that true community includes compassion for and solidarity with the poor, the marginalized, and the oppressed. And this prompt is meaningful to me because I was once challenged by a colleague of mine who said, Donald, churches don't really want to work with the poor. Most of them will say that they want to, and then when they come, they expect them to change and conform to the church. And these words challenged me so deeply that I set out to prove my friend wrong and tried to change my church into a place that would accommodate the poor, which was not an easy job at all. The tool that I educated my congregation with was called Open Table, which some of you may have heard about, but I'll give it a quick definition. It's a small group ministry that serves as a support group for people that are in poverty, either families and members of the working poor, a refugee, a young adult who's aging out of foster care. But my personal favorite was working with ex-cons. Tables usually consisted of 6 to 8 people who pledged their support, both physical and emotional, for about a year. And our brothers and sisters would set goals that they could accomplish in that year and then go to work on them with their tables, which I also like to call their portable families. So what I found was that successful tables ignored the 12-month time frame. They ignored the limitations set by the program and pledged themselves as friends for life. And a successful table changed along with the brother or sister at the center as they became lifelong friends. But an unsuccessful table expected constant progress on their goals, and backsliding was not tolerated. A successful table did not offer often direct financial assistance, and when they did, it was done in private. An unsuccessful table sometimes included money passing hands in public, which ended up being shameful and resentful to the people who were trying to work their way out of poverty. So about half the tables that I deemed a success were because they led to long-term relationships, which is what I accepted as a challenge from my colleague. So my conclusion was that he was half right. I'm convinced that our congregations want to serve the poor. And I'm also convinced that there are people in almost every congregation who already know how to do it. But corporately, we have a lot to learn if we're going to be successful poverty fighters. So in order to fight real poverty, our churches need to become opportunity hubs. And we need to be willing to change as fluidly as the people who are in poverty are expected to change. And we can't expect to be the same.
Thank you.
That's it. That's all.
Thanks. I'll go ahead and share. I chose this statement. Sacred community provides nurture and growth opportunities for all people, especially those who cannot fully and care for themselves. And I thought about that in the context that all of us, I think, have moments, no matter how physically healthy or spiritually healthy or financially wealthy we may or may not be, every human being has moments where they need support, they need help from others. And for me, a sacred community where we all try to ensure the health and welfare of every one of us blesses us by doing so. Being supported by people who desire the best for us, who are trying to help us reach our full potential, is an amazing thing. And many of us might even be aware of moments in our life where we haven't experienced that. And I think there's also a lot of truth in that sort of blessed to be a blessing experience, where sometimes being able to help someone or be supportive of someone going through a difficult time becomes such a blessing. It reminds us of our own vulnerabilities, and helps us have the confidence to share that vulnerability with others and allow others to help us. And for a lot of us, that's a hard thing to do sometimes, to actually allow someone to help us. And I think when we do that, it gives us that reminder, that that's who Christ was. You know, so many stories we know of Christ reaching out to those who needed help, but maybe who weren't able to help others in that way. And so for me, just there is something really beautiful about living, or the idea of living in a community where everyone is looking out for the welfare of everyone else, because we know that we're better together. We know that whether it's emotional, physical, spiritual, or mental health, when one of us succeeds, all of us succeed, and we all grow, and we all feel nurtured and cared for. And to me, that's the idea of sacred community.
Thank you. Yeah. For mine, I chose the gospel of Jesus Christ is expressed best in community life, where people become vulnerable to God's grace and each other. And one of the main things that I thought of with this is the times that we're in disagreement in community with other people, and that so many times we don't deal with those disagreements and those issues. We just let them continue to fester because we're so we're timid about actually addressing the issue. We're afraid of how the conversation will go, and if they will, that we're afraid of there being further issues because of that. And so instead of actually dealing with issues, you just kind of keep them to ourselves until they maybe find other ways that they come out that maybe are not as productive or healthy. And so I was thinking about, a few years ago, I shared something from the pulpit during a sermon that upset some people in a congregation that I was in. And afterwards, one of those individuals contacted me about it. And I didn't respond right away. I let it wait a few days before I did, to kind of have a cooling off period, just to kind of think about it and reflect. But we ended up finding a time that we should meet together and to talk about it. And so we both came together and we both shared our reflections about why either I felt it was appropriate and why they felt it wasn't appropriate. And we didn't leave that conversation agreeing. That's the point of it. But we did, I think, have a better understanding of where we were coming from in that disagreement. And to me, that's a really important aspect of communities, and understanding where each other come from when they have differing viewpoints. And so for me, like the idea of being able to actually get to that point, though, that takes a lot of vulnerability to put yourself out there and to have those conversations. But every time that I do, I find that I receive blessing because of it. I'm always afraid to have the conversations, and then when it's over, I'm like, oh, that went so much better than I thought it would have. And I'm so thankful that I finally, did that, because sometimes it's, kicking the can down the road for a long time before that happens. And so it reminded me of there's a quote in Rising Strong as a Spiritual Practice from Brene Brown that I would like to end my response time with. Vulnerability is not winning or losing. It's having the courage to show up and be seen when we have no control over the outcome. Vulnerability is not a weakness. It's our greatest measure of courage.
All right. The statement that I'm responding to is, we value our connections and share a strong sense of trust in and belonging with one another, even if we never have met. And I believe that online ministries is the biggest testament to this. So many of us have gotten to know one another online during classes and worships and talent shows that have never met or hadn't gotten to know well before. In our Wednesday night faith and formation group, there is a deeper trust among most of the regulars than I experience on a regular Sunday morning. People open up and they share fears and regrets, burdens that have weighed them down for years. But maybe the biggest example of the trust that we have is that we feel free to share even when we have a difference of opinion. There are so many times that we don't want to open the door to a disagreement, and we all have to pretend that we agree. But just a couple weeks ago, we had a difference of opinion about a scripture understanding, and I think all sides felt heard. We didn't come to consensus, but we didn't like fight it out either. We shared our thoughts about the issue, and we were still friends afterwards. And it seems really hard lately to find examples like that in real life. And I was so relieved that we could have that conversation and still come out knowing that, you know, we belong with one another and we still trust each other.
Thank you all for sharing reflections today. I do want to just point out that there were 7 and there's only 4 of us. So I just want to name the other ones that we didn't reflect on. And they are: true community upholds the worth of persons while providing a healthy alternative to self-centeredness, isolation, and conformity. That some disciples are called and ordained to particular priesthood responsibilities and ministries for the sake of the community, the congregation, and the world. And that we are called to create communities of Christ's peace in our families and congregations and across villages, tribes, nations, and throughout creation. As I mentioned, today started our Enduring Principles series that will continue through our Community Connections evening worships through the end of August. And every Sunday we will have a short focus moment of a coffee shop conversation with friends on talking about the enduring principle for that day. So we look forward to those conversations moving forward. And with that, I just would like to thank Donald and Kim and Ashley for sharing and reflecting on blessings of community. With that, have a good day and enjoy those beverages.